Most animated sequels get bigger. Bigger villains, bigger action, bigger stakes. The logic is simple. The first one worked, so give people more of the same thing. It's a formula that makes money and produces forgettable films. And it's basically the entire history of animated sequels. Kung Fu Panda 2 went the other direction. It took a panda who had just achieved everything he ever wanted, put him in front of a question he'd been running from his whole life, and refused to let him look away. Kung Fu Panda is one of my absolute favorite movies, because even the first time I watched it, I knew it was doing something I couldn't fully explain. The action sequences were unlike anything I'd seen before. The way Po moved against the five, the choreography, the chaos of him against their precision. And underneath all of that was something deeper that I felt before I had words for it. That movie actually changed something in me. The first film is still my favorite, that hasn't moved. And then the second one came out, and I loved it. But honestly, as a kid, I don't think I understood what it was doing. I knew it felt different, heavier, but I couldn't tell you why. Rewatching it as an adult, I can see it now. And what I found is a film doing things that most movies made specifically for adults can't come close to. Most people who love this franchise rank the second film above the first. I genuinely understand why. I don't agree, but I understand it completely. And this video is about why that argument exists at all. The first film left almost no room for a sequel. Think about where Po ends up. He became the Dragon Warrior and defeated Tai Lung, the most dangerous fighter alive.
The universe has brought us the Dragon Warrior.
What?
What? What? What?
Found peace with his father, earned the respect of the five. The story was complete in a way that actually felt complete, a finished thing. DreamWorks had a real problem, and the obvious move was the one most studios make. New villain, stronger threat, same hero, bigger stakes. To understand why that was a problem, you have to understand what DreamWorks was at that moment. The studio had a very specific pattern with sequels, and everyone could see it. Shrek came out in 2001 and was genuinely great. Shrek 2 came out in 2004 and was somehow even bigger. Shrek the Third came out in 2007 and people started checking their watches. Shrek Forever After came out in 2010 and nobody really cared. That's 9 years from cultural phenomenon to franchise exhaustion, and DreamWorks watched it happen to their most successful property in real time. Madagascar did the same thing. The studio had a gift for first films, and a track record of diluting them until they stopped meaning anything. Kung Fu Panda earned $630 million worldwide. A sequel was happening regardless. The question was, what kind? By 2011, the expectation for KFP2 wasn't that it would be terrible. The expectation was that it would be fine, that it would make money, that it would be the start of the same slow drift that got Shrek, a great film becoming a franchise, and a franchise becoming something you half-watch on a plane. Fine was the enemy. Fine was what this franchise was supposed to become. The pressure to take the easy route was enormous. They didn't take it. The team asked a question that most sequel teams never think to ask. Jennifer Yu Nelson and the writers kept coming back to one thing. What wound inside Po still hasn't healed? The question that broke the whole film open was internal, and finding it early changed everything about what the sequel became. Yu Nelson had been head of story on the first film and directed the hand-drawn opening dream sequence. She knew Po's world better than anyone at the studio. DreamWorks promoted her to director for the sequel, which made her the first woman to solo direct a major studio animated feature. She came in with one clear intention. The sequel had to have a reason to exist beyond the box office. Jonathan Abel and Glenn Berger, who wrote both films, came from King of the Hill, a show that demanded every episode function as a complete 3-act story with genuine character movement. Gags weren't enough. They brought that discipline to the features. Nearly a year of outlining before a single line of dialogue got written. They treated dialogue as the last thing to figure out. The emotional mechanics of every scene had to work visually first, before anyone opened their mouth. You can see this in the bean bun scene. The entire Five and Po relationship after the first film is there before anyone says a word about it. The friendship shows before it's stated. Once the team found the wound question, everything else followed. Lord Shen came from asking what a completely different kind of threat looked like. A peacock with cannons, intelligence and psychological warfare. Someone who attacks minds before bodies. Then the writers asked how Shen connected to Po's past, and suddenly the external threat and the internal crisis were the same story. The team traveled to China for research. Chengdu, panda reserves, historic sites. That trip shaped everything from Gongmen City's architecture to the Baby Po flashback sequences. One crew member held a month-old panda cub. That moment fed directly into how those scenes were animated. Yu Nelson said in interviews that the darkness was never there for shock value. Every dark element existed to give Poe something real to heal from. The genocide, the trauma, the weight that follows Shen through every scene. Guillermo del Toro joined as executive producer and helped them commit to it. His fingerprints are on the wolf army silhouetted in blood red against burning villages, on the genocide depicted without softening, on the fatalistic heaviness that hangs over everything Shen touches. The question the team refused to ask was how to raise the physical stakes. Everything else came from refusing it. And you can see that refusal before a single character opens their mouth. The first Kung Fu Panda is warm. Golds and oranges and wide skies, the Valley of Peace looking like somewhere you'd actually want to live. The color palette says, safe, home. Kung Fu Panda 2 opens on Gongmin City under occupation. Hard reds and blacks, industrial smoke rolling off Shin's foundries. Everything beautiful and completely wrong. You feel it before anyone explains it. The further into the film you go, the more you realize that color is Shin's psychology made visible. Wherever his factories operate, the sky turns the same colors he wears, red and black and choking gray. He has literally recolored the world around him to match what's inside him. I didn't register this consciously on first watch. I just felt something was wrong with the city. It's designed in before a single line of dialogue. Something I found reading about the production, Shin's design was built to be wrong on every level. Albino peacock. White is associated with death and mourning in Chinese culture, not purity. No warm colors anywhere on him. Just white plumage and red markings that, when he fans his tail fully, look exactly like the wolf emblem that breaks Poe open in the village fight. His body is calibrated to one target before the film has made that connection explicit. The design team also gave him metal talons on his feet that clink on stone floors as he walks. Every entrance is announced by sound before he appears. And inside those white feathers, hidden from view, are feather-shaped throwing knives. The thing that should make him ornamental is an arsenal. His beauty is the concealment. Before any of this, before Shen, before the cannons, before the main story starts, there's the prologue. Shadow puppetry against a black background. Ancient forms moving against it, telling you how Gongmin City came to be and what happened to it. Shadow puppet theater is one of the oldest storytelling forms in Chinese culture. Stories told that way exist in the register of legend, of things that happened so long ago that only their shape remains. The filmmakers chose this form for Shin's backstory deliberately. His history is already myth before you know it's also fact. The form says, this is the kind of story where entire peoples disappear. And then the 2D flashback sequences. When Poe's buried memories start surfacing, the film switches from 3D animation into something fluid and slightly distorted, the way a memory actually feels rather than the way an event actually happened. The images bleed and fragment and snap back. His past doesn't live in him the way his present does. It's something his body is still carrying. Every time those 2D sequences appear, you're inside what the memory does to him. Hans Zimmer and John Powell were doing the same thing in the score. When Shifu demonstrates the water droplet early on, there's a musical motif underneath it, 5 notes ascending, played on a fragile Japanese bamboo flute, barely there, almost like it's not sure it's allowed to exist yet, appears for a moment and disappears. Most people won't consciously register it. The score moves on. It's there for a reason that pays off 90 minutes later. Everything in this film, the palette, Shin's design, the prologue form, the animation language, the score, is pointing at the same place before the story gets there. Then the story starts, and the first scene proves the filmmakers remembered everything the first film built. The film's first real scene is Poe trying to stuff 40 bean buns into his mouth while the Furious Five cheer him on. My big question going into this movie as a kid was always, where are the Five and Poe at now? The first film ends with a relationship that barely existed. They tolerated him at best. So what actually changed? And this one scene answers it, without stopping to explain anything. Tigress, who spent the first film either dismissing Poe or actively hostile to him, is shielding herself from flying bean buns with the weary patience of someone who has seen this exact disaster too many times. The fondness is completely visible. Nobody says anything about it. The sequel just trusts you to understand that time has passed and things have moved. Abel and Berger talked about treating dialogue as the last element of any scene. The emotional reality has to work visually first. The bean bun scene is exactly that. They could have had someone say, We're all really close now. They show you Tigress laughing at bean bun debris instead, and you get it immediately. That's the whole relationship. Po is still completely himself through all of this, still chaotic, still leading with appetite. He became the Dragon Warrior and kept every quality that made him strange. A weaker sequel would have made him serious, given him gravitas, made him a proper warrior. This one understood his softness was always the whole point. The film is also genuinely funny, and the humor is load-bearing. Po and Crane crammed into a tiny boat. The five attempting a stealth mission while Po's enthusiasm nearly blows their cover every 30 seconds. The comedy creates breathing room so the heavier material doesn't crush the audience before the film is ready to use it. Every time the weight threatens to become too much, something lands and resets the room. That's not relief from the story, that's the story managing its own temperature. What it does with the action sequences took me a rewatch to actually see. Every fight in Kung Fu Panda 2 is the film's argument made physical. The village fight is where you first see what that argument actually is. Po and the five arrive at a musician's village being raided by wolf bandits, stripping the place of metal, instruments, tools, anything that can be smelted down for weapons. Tigress fights with precise, brutal tiger strikes, each one aimed at a pressure point or a joint. Crane sweeps and controls space. Viper threads through gaps too small for anyone else. Mantis targets nerve clusters. 5 distinct animal styles, each one the product of years training in a single form. Disciplined, effective, readable. Po fights like someone who absorbed all 5 styles by watching and never formally learned any of them. He bounces off his own belly. He catches a wolf midair and redirects him into 2 others without planning any part of it. His mass, his comfort with chaos, his complete absence of a recognizable form, all of it makes him genuinely unpredictable. He has no form to predict. And then he sees the symbol. The lead wolf's armor carries a red eye emblem with rays around it. Po freezes. His body just stops, completely involuntary, the way a body stops when something it buried gets dug up without warning. A flash of his mother's face. Then it's gone. The fight continues around him for a moment before he comes back. The scene does 6 things at once. What heroes do day to day, how the 5 work together, what Po's fighting style looks like, how Po and the 5 operate as a unit, who the wolf army answers to, and the one that actually matters. That Po is carrying something that can override every instinct he has. Something I realized on rewatch that changed how I saw the whole film. Po's style, improvisation, redirection, using his own body's weight and resilience to absorb and redirect, is already Wu Wei. The ancient concept of effortless action. Yield to the incoming force, redirect it, work with what's there. He was practicing this in every fight before anyone named it, before Shifu demonstrated the water droplet, before the soothsayer told him to stop fighting his memories. Po's natural approach to combat is already the answer the film is building toward. He just can't access it when the crack opens up. Every fight that follows is about whether that crack stays closed. When it does, he moves like water. When Shen finds it, he loses everything. He sees the symbol on the wolf's armor, and something in him recognizes something. And the alarm goes off. And now, the film has introduced its real subject, hidden inside an action sequence, without slowing down or announcing itself. A giant panda raised by a goose. In the first film, that was background comedy. The visual joke was always there, gently played. The sequel looks at that same detail and asks what it actually means to carry that question your whole life. Po is somewhere in his 20s and has never known where he came from. The first film treated it as set up for laughs. This one treats it as the thing quietly shaping everything. That night, he starts having nightmares. In one of them, he watches his parents replace him with a radish that does kung fu perfectly. It's absurd and funny, and then genuinely upsetting when you know the other detail. The radish is the same object he was hidden in as a baby. His subconscious took the thing his mother used to save him and turned it into what his parents actually wanted instead of him. A child's mind finding the cruelest possible interpretation of an event it can't access and can't stop circling. He tries to meditate his way through it the way Shifu taught him. The memories break through anyway. For the first time in this franchise, the film refuses to let Po ignore what's wrong. If you're getting something out of this breakdown, a like and a subscribe genuinely help. They're how this kind of video actually reaches people. Anyway, before Po leaves for Gongmen City, He asks his father the question he's been circling since the nightmare started. Mr. Ping tells him everything. The radish crate, how Po ended up in the alley, all of it. At some point in that conversation, Mr. Ping asks, "You're still my son, right?" A father asking his child to reassure him. Children watching this miss it completely. They hear a question. Adults hear the fear underneath it. Mr. Ping doesn't know what Po will find out there. He doesn't know if a biological family changes what they are to each other. He has no framework for any of it. The group sets off. Tigress tries to calm Mr. Trigger down, tells him they'll be back before he can say noodles. He says noodles immediately, can't even let her finish the sentence. The word is out of his mouth before the reassurance lands. It's funny, genuinely funny, and underneath it is a man holding on to the only word that feels stable right now. His whole life, his work, the one thing he knows for certain.
Noodles? Noodles? You were really dreaming about noodles?
He says it because it's the only answer he has. The film follows Po into whatever comes next, but that moment stays. That question doesn't only live inside Po. It lives in everyone who loves him and can't answer it for him. And then there's the person who's been carrying the same question for 30 years, who found an answer. Just not one worth having. Lord Shen's backstory opens the film, told in shadow puppetry. A family that invented fireworks, a prophecy that terrified their heir, a genocide, an exile. It's told the way a story gets told when no one is left to tell it cleanly. By the time you're watching the main story, Shen has already been carrying his wound for 30 years. He has spent those 30 years interpreting his banishment as abandonment. The symmetry with Po isn't announced. Both of them lost their parents. Both of them grew up with a question they couldn't answer. The difference is entirely in what they did with it. Po buried his under comedy and warmth and kept moving. Shen built an army. The self-fulfilling prophecy is the sharpest piece of writing in the film. Shen tried to prevent the warrior of black and white by killing all the pandas. That act produced the one survivor who grew up to become the warrior. He manufactured his own destruction and spent 30 years pointing the blame everywhere except at himself. He's intelligent enough to understand everything about the world, except the one thing that actually matters. Something I found in the production research. His design was built to make this argument visually. Albino peacock, the talons that announce him before he enters a room, throwing knives hidden inside his plumage. But there's one detail that ties it all together. The red markings on his tail feathers. When he fans them fully, look exactly like the wolf emblem that breaks Po open. His body is calibrated to target Po's wound, before the film has named what that wound is. Gary Oldman does something with the voice that I noticed on rewatch. Shen speaks with extreme control, each word placed exactly, aristocratic, never a syllable wasted, and underneath that control is something frantic. He sounds like a man who has rehearsed every version of every conversation and is one missed cue away from panic. The composure is one beat away from fracturing. Oldman keeps both things present at once, the elegance and the instability, which is exactly the character. He knows where Po's crack is before Po does. When they confront each other in the tower, Shen reads Po's face. Within seconds, he has found what he was looking for. The panda is looking at him with something personal, something that has nothing to do with the mission they came to complete. Shen knows exactly what that means. He's spent 30 years not dealing with the same thing. Your parents didn't love you, he says. They abandoned you. The truth, bent just enough to destroy. Po's foundation cracks on contact. The Dragon Warrior, who was routing Shen's guards with complete fluency, loses the thread completely. He can't fight and follow the thought at the same time. Shen keeps pressing, keeping Po destabilized while the cannon charges, then fires. Po is gone, into the river. What Shen can't see is that he just described his own situation. He was abandoned by parents who responded to his actions with horror. He has spent 30 years unable to accept that he caused it. He found Po's wound because it mirrors his own, then demonstrated in real time exactly what that wound has done to him. Tigress carries this too. Abandoned at an orphanage as a cub, so frightening that no prospective parent stayed. Her response was to punch ironwood trees until she lost all feeling in her paws. She is one of the greatest fighters alive and cannot feel her own hands. 3 exits from the same door. Tigress turned herself to stone, Shen built a weapon. Po hid behind being lovable. After the failed stealth mission, When Po admits to Tigress that he can't keep it together when Shen is in front of him, that everything surfaces and he loses himself. Tigress, who has never once shown physical warmth toward anyone in this franchise, puts her arms around him. One beat. Brief, stiff, real. She made herself incapable of this. She chose it deliberately, over years, at cost, and here she yields. She crosses the distance she built to protect herself, and she feels something for someone else instead. The capacity to yield is harder than the capacity to resist. Tigress proved that. It costs more, and it's the only exit that actually works. The film still has to prove it, against something no amount of training can touch. Kung Fu is a genre built on a promise. Train hard enough, develop your spirit deeply enough, face your fear completely enough, and you can overcome anything. Shen's cannon breaks that promise. Thundering Rhino trained for decades. He was Gongmen City's greatest protector. Shen fired once and erased him in seconds. Master Storming Ox and Croc watched it happen and went to their prison cells and stayed there. They drew the only rational conclusion available. You cannot punch a cannonball. No discipline, no technique, no mastery makes a person faster than artillery. The art they dedicated their lives to cannot answer this. The film takes their despair seriously. Their argument is correct within the rules of physical combat, and the film needs their conclusion to stand. Because if Kung Fu could conventionally answer the canon, the answer would be conventional. A conventional answer has no business carrying the weight this film is carrying. So the film has to find something else, and it planted it in the first act. Master Shifu is in the Jade Palace courtyard doing something that looks like nothing. He catches a falling water droplet, moves it across his arms, yielding to it, following where it wants to go, redirecting it without resistance, returns it to the plant without breaking its surface tension. He tells Po this is the next phase of training. Inner peace, the ability to accept a force fully and move with it. Po watches, impressed and vaguely intimidated, and the film moves on. It plays like a mystical flavor moment, the wise teacher doing something beautiful before the plot kicks in. When I got to the harbor on rewatch and saw Po catch the first cannonball, I went back to this scene. Same movement, same principle, same hands. The film had already shown me the answer in the first act and I had completely missed it. It's the entire climax in one gesture. The place where Po washes up is the ruins of his village, where the wound started, where his people lived before Shen came. He ends up at the origin of the question he's been asking his whole life. The soothsayer tells him to stop fighting the memories. When he finally stops, he sees his mother put him in the radish crate and run the other way, buying him time with her own life. That's the version he'd never known. He had been carrying the wrong reading of that moment for years. Then the water droplet comes back. 90 minutes earlier, Shifu caught a drop of water on his arm and returned it to a plant, yielding to the force, redirecting it without breaking it. Now the same movement, and this time it's a cannonball. The answer to the cannon was in the first act. Abel and Berger spent a year making sure those were identical before they wrote a word of dialogue. And at that exact moment, those same 5 fragile notes from the water droplet scene come back in the score. Same melody, but now the full brass section is carrying it, backed by sweeping strings, enormous and unstoppable. The whisper became an anthem. The score pays off its own setup at the same instant the screenplay pays off its. He stopped fighting what he already was. That was the whole move. The film doesn't end with the harbor battle. The armada is gone. And Po's first move is to offer Shen a way out. He says, "Scars heal." Shen corrects him. No, they don't. Wounds heal. What do scars do? They fade, I guess. That correction is the most revealing thing Shen does in the entire film. At the moment of his total defeat, standing on burning wreckage with nothing left, he stops to get the word right. He understands the distinction. He's been living with this question too, probably for 30 years. He knows exactly what Po is offering. I don't care what scars do. The only thing that matters is what you choose to be now. Shen lunges. He slices the rope holding his own cannon. It falls and crushes him. Shen dies by his own weapon, the one he built to conquer the city that exiled him. He chose the blade over the offer. The film says the fight was never the point. Po yielded. He offered. He waited. Shen made his choice. Wu Wei again, the same principle he'd been using since the first fight in the village, and now here at the end. He didn't defeat Shen. Shen defeated himself, with Po just present and open enough to let it happen. I watched this as a kid and saw a villain lose. Rewatching it as an adult, the conversation is what I couldn't move past. Po says the damage is done, the scars are real, and you still get to choose what comes next. That is a harder thing to say than forgive and forget. A more honest thing than it'll be okay. It's in a DreamWorks animated film from 2011. The adult in the room hears something the kid watching missed entirely, and it earns every second. Because Po has been through exactly what Shin has been through, and he's standing there anyway. The argument works because the person making it is living evidence that it's true. Po goes home. He unpacks crates of radishes at the noodle shop. The same object his nightmare turned into his parents' preference over him. The same object his mother hid him inside to save his life. He sets them down in front of Mr. Ping. I know who I am. I'm your son. The film's whole argument in 5 words. Understanding where you came from matters. Po spent the entire second act being taken apart by not knowing. But origin doesn't tell you who you are. Who you are is what you choose after you know. The first film is still my favorite. That hasn't changed. But I understand now why so many people disagree. The first film asked whether Po could become a warrior. The second asked whether Po could become himself. And it answered that question with more honesty than most films aimed specifically at adults ever manage. A sequel to an animated comedy about a panda and a goose who make soup. It has no business hitting the way it does. It does anyway. Thanks for watching. The first Kung Fu Panda breakdown is right here. Like and subscribe if this one worked for you.